taps echoes across a Kentucky field as an American honor guard fires 3 crisp salvos for 2 German POWs who died during a chaotic roll call at Fort Knox. The rifles' muzzles flash, the brass arcs, and a bugle carries over cut grass and oiled walnut stalks. Then, the shock. The caskets bear German colors, because the Geneva Convention demands dignity, and the United States keeps its word even for the defeated. Heino Kirk Erickson, Africa Corps, private, stares and whispers the only English he has. Yes, please, thank you, not to beg, but because courtesy under arms has just conquered him in a way bullets never could. An MP squares his cover. A chaplain folds his notes. The detail steps back, faces the graves, and salutes. It is discipline, but it feels like confidence. By evening, the camp motor pool idles beside flatbeds marked for Texas farms. The war needs food, and even prisoners will help create it. The rule is simple and shocking. Fair wages for enlisted men, strict rules for all, libraries and classes to kill boredom, ball fields and workshops to keep order. Erickson will soon stack sacks in a cotton gin and discover American coffee in a dented tin mug. He will learn the weight of $1 and the power of a promise kept. In the barracks, a magazine lies open, Supermen, the morning after. A free press mocks his old myth while the army feeds him on schedule. Every detail carries the smell of authority, carbolic, cut hay, hot canvas. Every act says the same thing. America fights with strength and restraint because it expects to win and expects to live with the world it wins. A German sergeant murmurs to a comrade that this enemy salutes even our dead. The thought lands like artillery on pride. If they do this for us, what won't they do for their own? At lights out, cicadas whir beyond the wire, and the Texas-bound trucks growl to life. The men lie awake tasting vanilla ice cream. They were served at noon, incredulous at sweetness in a prison. An American guard checks his watch, writes 2 neat lines in a logbook, and tucks the pencil behind his ear. He knows the larger machine that surrounds this quiet place. Trains of M1, Garans leaving Springfield, convoys of 30-06 cartridges, depots stacked with boots and blankets produced by free people working double shifts. Here, honor is a tactic, and mercy is logistics. The United States does not just defeat an army, it overwhelms a system. Tomorrow the prisoners will ride past, waving kids to fields that feed soldiers who will never know these names. Tomorrow a bugle will sound again, but for reveille, and the day will move forward on schedule, and the thought will ride with them. If our captors can spare respect for enemies, their capacity for friends must be bottomless. The next truth arrives on a truck bred over the wire, and the myth breaks like a crust. A dust cloud rises in North Africa as a U.S. deuce and a half grinds to a halt beside a barbed wire pen. Canvas flaps snap. Cases of sea rations and water cans thud into sand. Starved men freeze at the sight of food, then obey the hand signals. Form ranks, count off by 5s. Wait your turn. Order first, then mercy. An MP with a clipboard walks the line, ticking numbers while a cook's ladle clinks tin. The smell is beef stew and gasoline. This is not charity, it is strategy. Feed the defeated and you calm a battlefield, you save guard companies, you win harvests back home. The numbers prove it. About 425,000 Axis POWs will cross the Atlantic and live in camps, spread from Arizona to Pennsylvania. In Texas, sawmills hum, citrus is picked clean, canneries steam through the night. The United States pays enlisted prisoners fair wages credited to their accounts, then buys labor for lumber, beets and beans that keep rifles loaded and lunch lines moving. On the ship West, Heino Kirk Erickson practiced 3 words: work, wage, rules. In the barracks he learns 2 more, the library card. He signs out an English primer and, in a week, a magazine with a headline that laughs at his old certainties, Supermen, the morning after. The free press mocks him. The army feeds him anyway. That contrast weakens ideology more than any sermon. He tastes coffee sweetened with condensed milk. He tries ice cream and stares at the spoon like a tool from the future. He gains back weight and writes home, not about politics, but about peaches. Farmers across the county start the day with the same sound he hears in the compound. A whistle, a bell, a truck horn, all tuned to the schedule of a republic at work. The bigger machine churns far beyond his fence. M1 Garand lines at Springfield, belts of 30-06, rolling off presses, crates of spare parts for 5-ton trucks, tires stacked to the rafters. The enemy's shock is simple. Yesterday they fought men. Today they face a system. They begin to understand why a nation that feeds prisoners will never run out of meals for its own, and the lesson will become a rescue. When America aims this abundance, it can open any gate, even one surrounded by bayonets and watchtowers. The proof is coming with parachutes and amphibious tractors at dawn, and it arrives fast. Dawn hits Laguna de Bay on the 23rd of February 1945, and the air trembles with Pratt & Whitney engines, while Filipino guerrillas creep through reeds to a fence. From the south, amphibious tractors nose toward shore, ramps ready. From above, paratroopers of the 11th Airborne Division drop on time, rifles tight to harness, watches synchronized. Inside the wire at Los Baños, 2,147 civilian prisoners, women, children, missionaries, teachers blink at a sky turning friendly. How do you pull 2,000 hostages out from under Japanese guns without a massacre? You stack precision on partnership and move faster than disbelief. The plan is a braid. Guerrilla scouts cut communications. Paratroopers seize the guard force. Amtraks surge ashore as trucks roll up, and everyone departs before the enemy can form a response. A flag rises over a campus turned prison. A nurse from the Angels of Bataan clutches a steaming tin cup and whispers, "Coffee, hot, American." A boy counts aircraft and loses track. A woman hugs a paratrooper's webgear and can't stop laughing. The smell is mud, cordite, and soup. Casualties on the Allied side are tiny, 5 killed, because timing beats brute force when you can afford training, radios, and fuel. The enemy reels, not just from shock, but from irrelevance. Their lines are cut, their orders late, their captives gone. This rescue is a thesis about the United States. Democracy plus industry equals reach in all directions at once. The same machine that builds B-24 seconds and Liberty ships can also choreograph minutes, because logistics is the American accent. A lieutenant checks a clipboard and counts buses. A guerrilla leader points to the trail and says, "Now." A chaplain climbs aboard last. Aboard an Amtrak, a child eats white bread and stares at a jar of jam like a jewel. A paratrooper with a Thompson grins and says, "We'll get you home." Back at the lakeshore, exhaust heat bends the air while the last trucks grind up the road toward safety. The camp empties as if someone pulled a plug. The lesson hits every enemy commander reading the report. If Americans can write an operation like this on a calendar and then make it happen to the minute, how do you stop them? You don't. You step aside or you are swept aside. And the motor of that judgment is the arsenal of democracy that turns promises into ships, planes, rations, and rescue teams on schedule. That is how freedom moves, forward. "We must be the great arsenal of democracy," crackles a radio on the 29th of December 1940, and America treats it like a contract, not a speech. By 1944, the United States is producing almost 45% of the world's munitions, nearly half of global firepower from one free republic. Factories become fronts. Chalk lines are battle plans. The smell is cutting oil and hot aluminum. The soundtrack is rivet guns and freight whistles. At Willow Run, the line learns a new rhythm. 1 B-24 Liberator, roughly every 63 minutes at peak. That airplane carries 50 caliber Brownings and a bomb bay that swallows bridges. More importantly, it carries proof that a voting nation can out-organize dictatorships. Detroit pushes M4 Sherman tanks with 75mm guns and later 76mm barrels. Springfield Armory stamps M1 Garand receivers. Street, Louis loads belts of 30-06, Redstone packs rockets, Bethlehem ships steel. The parts list rolls like a litany because the scale is holy. America is not just making things, it is making time. Train yards fill with flat cars, tankers, and boxcars laser-timed to cross a continent. A dispatcher in Omaha moves divisions with a pencil. Women clock in with hair tied up and learn the language of torque values and safety wire. Men unfit for combat master jigs and micrometers. Over a foreman's desk is a calendar with red X's and one sentence. On time is a weapon. Inside a POW camp thousands of miles from the front, Erickson hears that sentence in a different key. Get to the field on schedule, stack the bales, punch out, study English, sleep. He watches a guard, read a pocket New Testament at lunch, and thinks about the funerals he saw taps for enemies. He realizes America does not separate muscle from morality. It absorbs both and asks for more. Axis planners try to map a counter and keep failing, because every chart begins with the same problem. Arithmetic. You cannot outfight a nation that can arm itself and its friends while keeping promises and paydays. A locomotive hammers west with Sherman bogies. A freighter takes on crates of P-51D wings. Somewhere a switchman pulls a lever and two continents move, and the sky begins to darken with serial numbers. Next, the camera tilts up to see what happens when industry gives America wings and tells it to go anywhere. Flight lines stretch to horizons, checklists click, and engines answer the nation's summons. Altogether, in 1939 the United States builds fewer than 3,000 military aircraft. By 1944, it builds 96,318 in a single year, and over 300,000 for the war. That is not growth. That is a force of nature written in aluminum and sweat. North Americans' P-51D Mustangs roll out with Packard-built Merlin engines that turn range into daylight ownership. Boeing's B-17 seconds leave Seattle in formation. The B-29 Superfortress arrives with pressurized cabins, remote turrets, and bomb bays deep enough to tilt campaigns. Douglas lines stamp C-47 Skytrains that land on dirt the size of ball fields and carry flour 1 hour, paratroopers the next. Every flight line smells like avgas and paint hardening in Sunday. Crew chiefs listen to new engines and hear one rough cylinder, fix it with feeler gauges, then sign inspection cards like oaths. Pilots talk in numbers, manifold pressure, inches of mercury, true airspeed, and in nicknames, Jug, Fortress, Cat, Goonie Bird. Across the ocean, the Luftwaffe reads tallies and sees a river you can't shoot down. One instructor tells a class the truth nobody wants to write on the board. They replace squadrons faster than we can train. In Texas, a POW looks up from a truck bed when a silver triangle passes overhead and asks, in careful English, "How many?" The guard laughs. "Enough." He means enough for 2 oceans, enough for friends, enough to make rescue missions feel inevitable. Every sortie is a sentence in a language the enemy now understands. Schedule. Factories backstop maintenance with boxes of AN bolts, safety wire, magnetos, tires, and spark plugs waiting in depots like seeds. Those seeds sprout on asphalt in England, coral strips in the Central Pacific, and wheat fields turned airfields in North Africa. From above, the American war looks like arithmetic shaped into wings. A navigator folds his map, checks a stopwatch, and thinks about a nurse in a camp who will taste hot coffee by noon because he held a course to the minute. When a nation can make the sky, it can set the clock for victory. The next proof thunders down slipways, where steel hulls turn the calendar into a servant. In 1944, the 8th Air Force launches 1,000 bomber raids with swarms of escorting Mustangs, and the system refuels, rearms, and flies again tomorrow. Stateside, Willow Run's cadence, one Liberator about every 63 minutes, feeds that rhythm like a drum. Numbers scare the night. More planes, more fuel, more crews, and always another crate of parts waiting at the next field. A siren wails at midnight in Richmond and sparks sheet over the James as another Liberty ship slides down the ways. The yard crew cheers and checks a board that climbs toward 2,710 hulls by war's end. Prefabricated sections swing like puzzle pieces, welders replace riveters, and time itself becomes a raw material. Problem: how do you feed two hemispheres at war across submarine-haunted oceans? Answer: standardize a 441-foot cargo ship and build them until convoys look endless from a periscope. 3 ships every 2 days, across American yards, turns hauling capacity into a weapon as decisive as any gun. A Liberty's 5 holds swallow boring miracles, jeeps in crates, K-rations by the million, drums of 100 octane, and those miracles keep P-51Ds above the bomber stream and M4 Shermans grinding past river lines. On deck, the smell is hot steel, salt, and coffee. Below, a boatswain marks cargo plans in grease pencil over destinations most people can't pronounce. U-boat captains read convoy lists and feel futility creep in. Sink 1 ship, 2 replace it next week. Inland, POW work crews bale cotton, stack citrus, and load lumber onto freight that feeds yards and railheads. American mercy cycling directly into American strength. A foreman stamps manifests with a blackened thumb and waves a train out of the yard. The whistle answers like a promise. At pier heads, cranes swing tanks into holds, while bands play marching tunes for men who will ride grey seas under blackouts. Somewhere inland, Willow Run hits its hour mark again, and another B-24 noses into daylight, proof that sky and sea keep the same schedule. The enemy studies this calendar and sees doom measured not in speeches but in departures. Every line item is a sentence in a language dictators cannot speak. Reliability. A sailor leans on a rail and watches the Statue of Liberty fall astern, thinking the name finally fits the job. He did not invent the cargo, he only moves it, but moving it at this tempo, under this flag, changes what is possible. Next, the story gets stranger still. Secret cities built in valleys and deserts to split an atom and end a war on American terms. Oak Ridge hums behind guarded gates, Hanford glows with new reactors, and boxcars deliver mines and metals without fanfare. Budgets that would choke empires go quiet and disappear into laboratories, while the same railroads that move wheat now move equations. When a republic can launch ships like this and build cities no map admits, the end is only a matter of scheduling. A train breaks at night beside a fence that isn't on any map, and new workers step into a city that shouldn't exist, Oak Ridge, where paychecks list no job, and questions end conversations. The glow is mercury lamps, cafeteria steam, and bus headlights sliding down switchback roads. Inside cinderblock buildings, women with slide rules measure decimals that must be perfect. In wooden calutrons, operators stare at dials and keep needles steady, because steady means enriched uranium flows. The United States spends billions in 1,940 seconds dollars to build entire towns that manufacture math, and the only sign on the highway says, restricted. Out west, Hanford's B reactor comes online and starts a river of plutonium that will arrive at a desert called Trinity in July 1945. The scale shocks even veterans of shipyards, secret post offices, miles of pipe, power grids, laundry plants big enough to serve a continent. These are not palaces. They are factories for ideas, and they prove something dictators cannot imitate: open society brainpower linked to industrial muscle. Every shift change has the rhythm of a deployment. The smell is solvent, hot metal, and cafeteria coffee. A guard checks passes with a calm that looks like certainty. Behind the gates, wives write home they are making powder, and husbands shrug because nobody really knows the whole machine, and that's the point. On Sundays, the bus is empty for church, and the hymn rises above cooling towers. In the break room, a bulletin board reminds workers about safety, savings bonds, and silence. Yet even here, generosity seeps in, because Americans bring it with them. A potluck table grows long, a neighbor drops off milk, a mechanic fixes a stranger's fan belt without asking a name. The enemy never sees this place, but they feel its weight when calendars shift and strategies collapse. When a republic can build a city for an equation, it can write the ending of a war. A POW in Texas hears rumors, secret plants, new power, and doesn't know what to believe. He writes in his notebook anyway. They build things we cannot imagine. The sentence is truer than he knows. The bridge from silent cities to loud surrenders is simple. When science, money, and faith in each other move in formation, victory becomes a schedule. That schedule will snap shut in deserts and skies. But first it crushes pride in a place that once seemed unbeatable. Tunisia, where a field army runs out of gas, ammo, and answers. The dust in Tunisia tastes like iron and heat, and by May 1943 the Afrika Korps is boxed in by artillery, fighter bombers, and columns of trucks that never seem to stop. They're arriving. Over 250,000 Axis troops lay down arms in North Africa, an entire field force reduced by air supremacy and relentless supply. Prisoners stream past stacks of jerrycans and crates marked for the next push, and each crate is a sentence in America's language. We don't pause. When Heino Kirk Erickson is frisked, the GI's hands are quick and professional. The man could be a cousin, and that is disarming in its own way. He steps into a makeshift pen and watches US trucks back up to the wire and dump sea rations and water into the dust. Order first, then mercy. The message is quiet but overwhelming. The United States treats logistics as morality. The enemy's shock is visible in the way shoulders drop. They thought bravery could outlast fuel, but fuel has a different opinion. Above, P-38, lightnings circle like silver hawks. On the road, GMC trucks shift through gears that sound like a factory singing. A chaplain opens a small book and speaks to men on both sides of the wire, not about ideology, but about the human job of going forward. Far away, Camp Hearn and Camp Trinidad wait 700 acres here, 3,000 prisoners there with ball fields, workshops, and pay scales that turn rage into routine. Work, wage, rules, Erickson repeats, and the rhythm feels honest. In Texas soil he will lift crates, pick cotton, and learn nouns that matter: payday, library, parole. He will see an American honor guard salute German graves and feel certainty slide away. Supermen, the morning after, a magazine jokes, and for the first time the joke lands. The enemy realizes it has been fighting a nation that turns decency into a weapon. Numbers finish the argument. Trains never stop. Depots don't sleep. The sky arrives each morning with fresh serial numbers. In surrender camps, officers count heads and write totals that deflate strategy: too many losses, too fast, against an opponent that grows when it spends. The bridge to the home front is inevitable. These prisoners will mow, harvest, and load the very goods that keep American troops moving. A field army collapses, a continent awakens, and the clock, all American and unrelenting, ticks toward liberation after liberation. In Texas, the heat shimmers over a compound, and a POW detail marches out with shovels on shoulders, guards slung with M1 Garand's 8-round en-bloc clips that lock in with a metallic ping when empty. They pass a baseball diamond and a library, then climb onto a truck headed for orchards that need hands. Camp rules are strict, wages are posted, and the foreman expects the day's quota like any boss. What shocks the prisoners is not harshness, but normalcy. Yes, please, thank you. Erickson practices, because courtesy is a key here. He folds his pay chit and later buys stamps and a chocolate bar. He writes to his mother that the Americans feed them well. He even tries vanilla ice cream and stares at the spoon. In the evenings, classes teach English and arithmetic. A chaplain discusses the Geneva Convention, and men discover the strange relief of predictable justice. On Sundays, funerals for the 2 Fort Knox dead include German uniforms, a war flag, an American honor guard, and taps solemn, exact. The feeling inside the wire changes. If they honor our dead, they will never abandon their own, a sergeant murmurs. The enemy's shock here is private but profound. Dignity becomes persuasion. Outside the fence, harvest trucks deliver to canneries that steam late, and freight cars roll toward ports where Liberty ships swallow crates by the thousand. Schedule again. The smell is peaches and diesel. The sound is a whistle and a ledger stamped received. America's gift is to turn enemies into witnesses. Supermen, the morning after. The magazine headline still stings. but the camp's teacher explains the joke. It's not that you were never brave, it's that you met a country that can outbrave and outbuild at the same time. Days stack into months with the certainty of an assembly line. Men gain weight, gain English, gain a grudging respect for a system that works because everyone, from guard to prisoner, has a role and a rule. When the commandant announces Germany's surrender, he asks the POWs to keep working through harvest. Many do, because the job needs doing. "We will keep the rules," one says. The bridge forward is clear. When even your captives show up on time, the war's verdict is signed. Now, zoom out to the scoreboard where numbers erase doubt munitions, aircraft, ships, and then to the deserts and skies where those numbers decide days. A procurement officer flips a sheet in 1944 and the number burns into history. The United States produces almost 45% of the world's munitions that year. One flag, nearly half the firepower. No empire in memory has done that while fighting across 2 oceans and arming friends from Scotland to Saipan. The ledger is not dry, it is a battle hymn of factories. M4. Shermans with 75mm and 76mm guns roll off lines. Browning, 50 caliber belts, spool into crates. Millions of 30-0, 6 rounds leave street. Louis in wooden boxes that smell like pine and promise. Willow Run clicks at peak cadence, roughly 1 B-24 every 63 minutes, while Seattle shapes B-17 seconds and B-29 seconds, with remote turrets and pressurized cabins. The 8th Air Force launches 1,000-bomber raids and sleeps knowing tomorrow's wave is fueled, armed, and briefed. On the water, Liberty ships hit 2,710 hulls, convoys thicken, and U-boats start reading the end in tonnage columns rather than sinking reports. The enemy's shock, again, is arithmetic. You can't train replacements faster than America can make the need for replacements. A staff officer mutters, "They are a continent with an invoice." Back home, a riveter wipes sweat, signs a quality card, and walks past a poster that says, "On time is a weapon." In a Texas camp, a POW studies a dictionary and circles 3 words: schedule, payday, respect. He looks at a newspaper photo of paratroopers in the Philippines and realizes those men moved because factories said yes. "Keep up the good work," a commandant once told the harvest crews after surrender, and it felt less like an order than a principle. Across the country, rail yards paint the night with sparks, as switchmen throw levers and assemble trains that are really arteries. The bridge to the final chapters is built from these numbers. When a republic can fund secret cities, launch ships like bread loaves, outfly storms, and still salute the enemy's dead, the outcome is not mysterious. It is inevitable, timed, and soon. Now the scoreboard fills the screen. 96,318 aircraft in 1944 alone, more than 300,000 airplanes for the war, 2,710 Liberty ships launched in 4 years. Over 250,000 Axis troops surrendered in Tunisia. One country carries almost 45% of the world's munitions output in 1944. Each number is loud, but together they hum like a generator. Walker Flight Line, P-51, D Mustangs, warm engines with a note that sounds like decision. Ground crews talk spark plugs and sign cards. Pilots touch lucky coins and step-up ladders. Escorts form, and the bombers lumber into sky. Cross a pier, cranes swing jeeps and crates. Boatswains chalk cargo plans. Black coffee steams in tin mugs at 0300. A band plays one song, and then the next as hatches close. In a camp library, a POW traces a map and whispers, "They went everywhere." That whisper is not fear now, it is awe. The enemy's shock never came from a single battle. It came from an economy that made battles daily. America did not just win, it could afford to be decent while winning. Guards at Fort Knox fired volleys over German graves because rules were national armor. Farmers paid POWs because labor mattered more than hate. Nurses freed at Los Baños tasted hot coffee and called it America in a cup. The smell of cutting oil in Detroit avgas in England, and salt spray off Norfolk was one smell, the smell of a country moving. A planner in Omaha studies a timetable and smiles because every line is green. A kid in Kansas counts trains passing at midnight and dreams of the world those cars will tilt. The bridge to the end is simple and impossible. Secret cities switch on, a desert flashes, and whole empires learn that calendars can be weapons. Before sunrise on the 16th of July 1945, a desert in New Mexico glows like a second day as the first atomic device detonates at Trinity, the product of cities that never appeared on maps and paychecks that never explained themselves. The United States spent roughly $2 billion wartime dollars to split the atom at scale, and it did it while flying thousands of sorties, launching thousands of ships, feeding millions of soldiers, and still saluting the enemy's dead. Capacity married to conscience. The payoff looks like impossible arithmetic made real. A free people, voting and arguing and worshipping, outbuilt every rival, and then used that strength with restraint, feeding POWs, honoring funerals, rescuing hostages, and returning to peace without purges. Heino Kirk Erickson will visit the German graves at Fort Knox as an American citizen. Tears in his eyes, proof that mercy can turn an enemy into a neighbor. Yes, please. Thank you, he once said at the wire. Later he will add, I belong. A nurse from Bataan will hold a mess tin that no longer shakes and write, hot coffee, freedom. A shipfitter will hang up his torch and watch the last Liberty ship take water, understanding he helped draw a highway on the ocean. A pilot will shut down a P-51D, pat the cowling, and walk toward silence. The enemy's final shock is the oldest truth. Strength without values is a threat. Strength with values is destiny. Statistics that once sounded like boasts, now read like receipts. 96,318 aircraft in 1944, 2,000. 710 Liberty ships, almost 45% of global munitions, over 425,000 POWs managed with order and decency. No other nation could have achieved that blend of scale and soul, because no other nation trusted its people so completely. The chapter closes where it began, with a bugle over green grass and a flag that folds the same for friend and former foe. America did not just win the war. It taught the world how a republic fights, by keeping promises, making more than it uses, saving more than it must, and leaving behind a map of rail lines, runways, and memories that point one way forward. The schedule held, the gates opened, and freedom got there on time.